guys, it's Katie, and today I want to review A Court of Mist and Fury. I'm so excited. This book came out on May 4th, which was a couple of days ago now, and I read the entire thing in one day, and it was just so good, and I just really wanted to talk about it today with you guys, so if that's what you're here for, stick around. So first things first, A Court of Mist and Fury is the second book to A Court of Thorns and Roses, so if you have not read this, you should go read that. Then you can listen to the spoiler-free part of this video about A Court of Mist and Fury. So A Court of Mist and Fury is, like I said earlier, the second novel in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by J Maas. It starts out 3 months after the events of Under the Mountain, and all of the characters are very broken and they're still recovering from that time under the mountain and under Amaranth's curse. It's very intense and very emotional at the beginning. Tamlin and Feyre's relationship is really not where it should be because the two of them are so broken that they don't really know how to have a healthy relationship. So that's kind of where the book starts. Obviously, Rhysand is a big player in this book. He does call in his deal with Feyre, so that's a very large influence in how this novel kind of goes, I suppose. You spend a lot of time in the Night Court, which is really, really interesting, and it was really fun to be in a new setting. You meet a lot of new characters who are just very dynamic and very interesting, have their own very intense backstories. You also go back to Feyre's family and spend some time with them. This book is just such an adventure, and it's so intense and it's so emotional and it's a great story, and you should read it. Especially if you read A Court of Thorns and Roses. You should definitely pick up A Court of Mist and Fury. Like, this should be the top of your TBR, kind of. You should pick it up. If you haven't read it, go read it and come back and finish this review, and I'll see y'all then. Okay, spoiler section. From here on, you must have read the book. This book, you guys, oh, my heart. I just don't even have words for how emotional it was. I think that part of it is I read it in a day. I read it in a matter of hours, and it's a very intense emotional roller coaster because Feyre is so broken at the beginning of the novel, and you feel broken the way that Feyre is broken. A lot of her tendencies are very similar to the way depression feels, and it was very hard to read that for me. I have had my issues with depression in the past, and so reading from Feyre's perspective for like the first half of the novel, I just cried. Like, it was so beautiful, and it was so well written, and it was so heartbreaking. But really, I think what sold me on this novel was the emotional journey. You feel broken as Feyre is broken, and you feel really helpless in a lot of ways while Feyre feels very helpless. So admittedly, I was rooting for Tamlin at first because for a long time after I finished the first novel, I just really felt like if she fell in love with Rhysand, it would really kind of negate Feyre from the first novel. It just made sense to me that she went through all of this for him, she would stay with him. But I love the way that Sarah really stopped making me feel that way. The relationship that she had with Tamlin in A Court of Mist and Fury really is unhealthy, and he doesn't treat her right, and he traps her inside of the house, and he doesn't listen to what she says, and he never comforts her when she is up in the middle of the night throwing up from her nightmares. And you see how not only how both of them are broken, but how their relationship is broken, and you see how Rhysand kind of picks up the pieces. I'm upset that what happened with Tamlin happened, not because I think she needs to be with Tamlin or anything like that, but because that's sad. I mean, just the whole situation was really sad to be in such a poisonous relationship with someone. She was dying inside and outside. She was dying from this relationship, and so I think it's just beautiful that Rhysand saved her physically, but also ended up saving her emotionally, and that was beautiful. So my thoughts before going into this book, I really thought that Rhysand would be the one to pick up the pieces for Feyre. I didn't think Tamlin would be the bastard that he is, but I didn't think that she would leave the court so quickly and just be with Rysand. I didn't think that was not a possibility, but I suspected that it would be more than 2 of her like monthly visits before she stayed forever. But I thought that was cool. I thought that Rysand really did take care of her and gave her that time to recover from Tamlin, and I thought that was beautiful. And then when he saved her after Tamlin locked her in the house, it was heartbreaking, but she got there, and once she was there and awake, he said he needed to leave, and she asked to go, and he said yes. And he took her to the city of Starlight, and it was so beautiful and so perfect. And then he introduced her to his inner circle, and they were great. I love the new characters that you meet in Rhysand's court. His inner circle was great. I think that this whole novel kind of was filled with broken people who built each other back up. And so obviously Cassian and Asriel and Rhysand all kind of did that for each other a long time ago as children when they were all living in the camp together. Mor was kind of built back up by Cassian first, but then by being pulled into the group, she was built up in that way. Amren, I think, is a whole nother story, honestly, because she's not actually High Fae. She was made the way that Feyre was made, and she's something else, and she was in the prison, and she drinks blood, and I hope we learn more about her. I hope that she's released or something in the next book, but I really liked Amren as well. I thought that she was a very interesting, dynamic character in the group. Those are Rhysand's inner circle, and they all were broken in their own way, and they accepted Feyre and they helped Feyre. You know, they were training her and they were friends to her, and she'd never really had friends before. And so I thought that that was really beautiful how well she integrated into their group even before she and Rhysand had much of a positive relationship. I think that when Tamlin and Lucien were the ones that had betrayed Feyre and Rhysand and his group, that was really sad. And Feyre says at some point, "Not love can be poison." Like in the last chapter, I think she says that. I felt betrayed on behalf of Feyre, of course, but it's just so upsetting that Tamlin still is broken, and you kind of realize that Feyre and Rhysand aren't anymore when you see how broken Tamlin still is. I do wonder whether Lucien knows about Feyre's other tattoo or not, so I think that will be interesting in the next novel, is whether or not Lucien is going along with this and doesn't tell Tamlin, or if he does find out and does tell Tamlin, or kind of what role that Lucien is going to play. I am not surprised that Lucien and Elaine are mates. I think that that will be very interesting in the next novel, and I'm excited to see kind of where that goes, as well as Cassian and Nesta. I wonder where that's gonna go. I do have the Target copy of A Court of Mist and Fury, and it has a short story in the back, and it's about Cassian and Nesta. I haven't read it yet because I kind of wanted to wait and savor something and have something to look forward to when I finish finals. So I do have that to read, but I still kind of like know where that's going, I think, and hope that's where that's going. We'll find out. Woof, let me tell you guys, I just was blushing through this whole novel. There were some really, really detailed sex scenes. I think it was important, not only in the beginning when she was with Tamlin, but also later on when she's with Rhysand, because I think that that's a comfort to Feyre, and so in the beginning when she and Tamlin were together, that was all they had, and I think that she kind of held on to that, and I think he held on to that, and that's how they knew that they loved each other, was when they were being physical with each other. I think with Rhysand, it was something we all anticipated so much because there was a lot of flirting and banter between them that kind of led up to it, and then that whole scene where he's in his court, the court underneath the ground, I forget what it's called, but when he was in that court and he and Feyre were like getting frisky in front of everyone, that was a really intense, very slow burning, very, very anticipatory scene, and it was long and it was really crazy, and Rhysand loses control at the end, and this kind of spurs the first fight that she and Rhysand have. I mean, the first like real fight. They got into a lot of arguments before that, but this was the first like really intense, didn't talk for days fight, because Rhysand was protecting her and she could only see Tamlin, and he was like, stop comparing us, and that was a really intense scene, but it was good, and it built some more tension between what was going to happen in the future. I like that Rhysand was training her, and I liked that he wasn't training her to be a weapon for him. He was training her because she needed it, and because she would need to defend herself, and he knew that, but also to unlock all of those different powers within her so that she wasn't out of control. I love that he didn't have that secondary motive of her being a weapon for him, or him using her in any way. So that was beautiful and comforting, honestly. And so obviously when they're training, at some point he gets shot with the arrows and she saves him, and to save him she traps the Suriel. And when she traps the Suriel, she finds out that they are mates. The first time I read it, the Suriel said something about if you want to save your mate, blah, 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 you know, get these flowers or something. And I read that and like halted and was like, mate. And then of course like one line later, Feyre's flipping out because she also heard mate, and I think she kind of blew it out of proportion. But what was really beautiful is that when she escaped on her own to think about it, she started painting again. And I think it was interesting that that kind of is the end of her brokenness, her depression. She does what she loves again, and she has some time with Mor to kind of talk about it and to embrace her painting before Rhysand shows up. Honestly, one of my favorite parts of this novel was when Rhysand shows up to the cabin and she offers to make him soup, and he's like, you're gonna give me food, you know, like freaking out. And she's like, what? Like, why is that a big deal? And he says, well, when you offer me food, it means you accept me as your mate. She didn't know. And so she says, well, you start talking and I'll start cooking. And at the end, I'll decide whether or not I want you to be my mate. And that whole chapter was amazing. You learn so much of Rhysand's side of the story in there, where he's known about her for years. He started having dreams. She painted her dresser with the stars and all of these things, and it was just awesome, and I loved that. And then there was a little tiny line later on when she's back at home with her sisters and Rhysand and the queens, and Nesta says, this is why you painted the stars. And I loved that. I loved that whole thing. Them being together just made me so happy, and it made them happy. I loved it. I think one of my favorite parts is at the end when Rhysand makes her the High Lady of the Night Court. Not his wife, not his consort, but the High Lady, and his equal, his partner in every way. And I think that that's beautiful, and I think that that is kind of one of the main points of the novel, is that, you know, you need a healthy relationship and you need an equal partnership, and I think that those things are very important in real life and obviously in Feyre's life. And so I think that that's really beautiful. And actually one of my favorite, this is so silly, but one of my favorite things is during the chapter that is Rhysand's point of view at the end, right after Feyre goes back with Tamlin to the Spring Court, he's telling them like she's there, she's in the Spring Court with him, like she's gonna be my spy, and they're like, what do you mean she's there? Like, we can't just leave her there, we need to go get her, she's your mate. And he's like, she's not just my mate, she's the High Lady of the Night Court now. And Mor is like, are you telling me that my High Lady is in the Spring Court right now? Because she was so mad, and that line was just so perfect, and I was like, I love you. That moment was really funny to me. I kind of laughed out loud. I thought Mor was great. She was very, very fun and personable and kind of good to be around, and I think she was good for Feyre to be around, but also she was very protective of her companions, and I thought that that was really beautiful and kind of some very big part of her. So yes, that's one of my favorite lines for no reason. Really, this book I think was about healing. There were some really awesome like fight scenes and some very like emotional scenes and some very steamy, blush-worthy scenes, and I think that this book was beautiful and well made and had a wonderful pace, and It just was awesome. I do plan on rereading it actually in a couple of days. I'm going to reread very slowly, and I'm probably going to annotate this time, mark some of my favorite lines, and then I also plan on reading the short story in the end. So really, that's going to be it for this review / discussion. I loved this book, and it really impacted me emotionally, and it was so great. I really hope that you guys like it too if you've read it. If you have any, thoughts or opinions that are the same or different than mine, I'd really love to hear from you in the comments down below. Or if you want to talk about some things that I maybe didn't mention in this video, I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of my videos, hit the subscribe button, and that's gonna be it. I'll catch you next time. Bye, y'all.